The title of the paper, the presentation is The Status of Bajjika as a Language. So, Bajjika is an Indo-Aryan language spoken in Bihar, and it is an unrecognized mother tongue in Bihar. And it is also a controversial language as it is considered as a dialect of Mathli. So first of all, I need to do an introduction. So that data from 24th edition of Ethnologue states that there are approximately 7,139 living languages in the world. Around 7,102 languages were there earlier. And in India, around 19,500 mother tongues are spoken, of which 121 mother tongues have been completely recognized and having a strength of 10,000 or more speakers. And there are so many unrecognized mother tongues in India, and such an unrecognized mother tongue is Bajjika, that is spoken in Bihar in Bajjikanchal region. And this region includes Vaishali, Muzaffarpur, East Champaran, West Champaran, Sitamarhi, Sihar, and some parts of Samastipur. So there are some objectives of this paper, this presentation. These are to explain the boundaries of Bajjikanchal because it is not defined. It is defined, but some people who speak Mathli language, they don't consider the boundary of Bajjikanchal as it is. And the second objective is to find out specific reasons for ignorance of Bajjika. Then to discuss the current status of this language, this is also an objective. I have used the desk research technique which is based on secondary data, and I have collected some primary data through observation. This presentation aims to discuss the existence of Bajjika, which is a Bihari language, as we told earlier, and several linguists and authors have been working since 1900s, but the traces of this language could be found in 6th century, that is 600 BC, in the contemporary Vajji Sangh. And Sir Grierson was the first person who did survey on Indian languages. Although he had not mentioned Bajjika in his work, but he pointed out a language that was similar to Mathli and influenced by Bhojpuri. He named it as Western Mathli and sometimes he named it as Bhojpuri Mathli. But scholars like Mahapandit Rahul Sankritya and Dr. Yogendra Prasad Singh and others have explored this language and presented so many evidences to show Bajjika as a separate language than Mathli and Bhojpuri. So there are some findings I have included in this presentation. So first of all, I will take the excerpt from Linguistic Survey of India, Part 2, Volume 5, which is written by George Abraham Grierson in 1903. And he has taken the example of Bihari and Oriya languages. And he considered Bhojpuri, Maghi and Mathli language in Bihari languages, and at some places an author himself got confused in the recognition of other languages. He mentioned that a particular dialect might have been come under Mathli as that language was spoken in the same area where Mathli was spoken. Such a language is Bajjika, that was named in this volume as Western Mathli. Sometimes the author named it as Eastern Bhojpuri. So in the words of author Mr. Grierson's word, the Mathli spoken in the Muzaffarpur district and in a strip of country of the eastern side of Darbhanga is strongly infected by the neighboring Bhojpuri spoken in various forms in the adjacent district of Saran and in the greater part of Champaran. So much is the case that, as spoken by some people, it is difficult to show whether the dialect is Mathli or Bhojpuri. It may be called Western Mathli. So it shows that author himself was confused between Mathli and Bhojpuri, or he found he didn't mention that it can be other language. Then come to the second point, that is Sahitya Nibandhavali. It is a book written by Rahul Sankritya in 1949, and he has mentioned in his essay Matri Bhashao Ka Prashna in his book that Grierson's work was the first work of such kind of Indian languages. So the division of languages and regions were also at the initial stage. He also enlisted some languages according to regions where those were spoken. In that inventory, Bajjika was enlisted at 26th position with the name of Vajji Janpad. So this is a picture from his essay, Matri Bhasha Ka Prashna, where we can see that Bajjika is mentioned with Vajji Janpad. Then we have Puratatva Nibandhavali. This is a book of Rahul Sankrityayan written in 1957. In this book, Dr. Uday Narayan Tiwari had written this fact that Mathili is the language of Mithila's Mathil Brahmin. So other communities obviously will speak some other language. Being the language of ancient Bajjika has been designated as Bajjika, Vaishali ki Bhasha Bajjika. But the name Bajjika or Bajjika given by Mahapandit Rahul Sankrityayan has been universally accepted. Then we have Bajjika Bhasha or Sahitya. So Dr. Siyaram Tiwari has written this book in 1964. He mentioned in his work that the name Bajjika given by Rahul Sankrityayan has been universally accepted for this language. And according to him, Bajjika is very much different than Mathili. He also discussed some nature of Bajjika, that is towards Tadbhav words, and he also discussed about the nature of Mathili, which is towards Sanskrit Tatsam words. He also mentioned that the words from Arabic Persian have been accepted in Bajjika, while Mathili does not accept words from these languages. He has mentioned some examples, that is, on the basis of which Bajjika and Mathili are different languages. So there is a tendency of germinating a sound at middle position of words in Bajjika, while this phenomenon doesn't occur in Mathili. We can have example here. In Bajjika, there are words like okkar. Okkar is a word used for his or her in English, and in Mathili it is okkar. In Bajjika it is rakham. Kha letter is germinated here, and in Mathili it is rakhab. In English it is will keep. So like that, other examples we have. Then case marker is also different in Bajjika and Mathili. Like we can see here, in nominative case, Bajjika has K, but Mathili has K. In instrumental case, its marker is say in Bajjika, but in Mathili it is saw. Then in dative case, la is in Bajjika and le or ke hetu in Mathili. So these are the differences. There are differences in the pronouns of Bajjika and Mathili as well. So for English word yours, Bajjika has tohar sake and Mathili has aha sake. For English word is or her, his or her, the word okkar is for used in Bajjika and okkar in Mathili. So these kind of differences we can have in Mathili and Bajjika language. Then Dr. Tiwari has also mentioned the differences between the Bhojpuri and Bajjika language as well. The same thing, the tendency of germination occurs in Bajjika but not in Bhojpuri. So we have words like okkar and okkar for the words his or her in English. There are case markers difference in both the language also, like dative has la in Bajjika and khatir in Bhojpuri. And vocative case marker is ho in Bajjika, and Bhojpuri it is a. Pronouns are also different in both languages, in Bhojpuri and Bajjika. So in Bajjika it is hammar, and in Bhojpuri it is hamar for the word mine in English. So we can see the difference between these languages. Then we have Bajjika और असमिया के संस्कार गीतों का तुलनात्मक अध्ययन. So the writer Mathura Prasad Sharma, he denied the statement given by the linguist Dr. Grierson. He explained that Bajjika is the mother tongue of Vajji. This is the language of the part of North Bihar which had been a part of Vajjisan in ancient time. So Dr. Grierson called it Western Mathili. Before this, while preparing 7 grammars of dialects and sub-dialects of the Bihari languages, he named it as Mathili Bhojpuri. And in part 2, he called it a kind of Bhojpuri. It is clear that Grierson recognized Bajjika as Mathili at one hand, and on another hand he found it similar to Bhojpuri. But in fact, it was neither Mathili nor Bhojpuri. So Dr. Grierson never thought that there could have been another language apart from Mathili or Bhojpuri in Bihar. So then we have Bajjika भाषा के कतिपय शब्दों का आलोचनात्मक अध्ययन. So this is a thesis from 1987 written by Yogendra Prasad Singh. In his thesis, he mentioned Dr. Hadev Bahri, who said that Vajji was a famous Mahajanpad in the Buddhist period and Vaishali was its capital. And it encompassed 8 Janpads in which Lichavi and Videha is predominantly mentioned. So remember that Videha was a huge state in the Ramayana period which was also called Mithila. Probably Mithila was the capital of Videha, so it may be possible that the area of ever mentioned Mithila and Vajji were not different, rather same area. So I am mentioning all these things because we are talking about the area of Bajjika here. And today's Tilhar division has been a part of the same governing bodies area, which is probably that ancient Bajji and Videha. It may be same. Then we have Bajjika ka Swarup. In 1991, Yogendra Prasad Singh has mentioned that this word Bajjika, it is made up of by appending the suffixes ka and a in the word Bajji. Then we have Bajjika Sahitya Ka Itihas written by Praful Kumar Singh in 1995. He also accepted what Mahapandit Rahul Sankrityayan told about this language, Bajjika. According to them, whole Muzaffarpur, Vaishali, Sitamarhi, Ghorasan, Dhaka, Patai, Nansi, Pipra, Kesaria of Champaran, Marhora, Digwara, Parsa and Sonpur of Saran are included in Bajjikanchal. Then we have so many works from 1900s to 2000 and after 2000 it's going on. We have a famous writer in Bajjikanchal area whose name is Srinivas Sudhanshu. He also supported the view of Mahapandit Rahul Sankrityayan as he has written that the word Bajjika was first used by him. Now, I want to show you the region where Bajjika is spoken. So these are the Bajjika spoken region. This map has been taken from a paper, The Bajjika Language and Speech Community, written by linguist Abhishek Kashyap. So, whose several works related to Bajjika language could be found. It shows the Bajjikanchal region that has been discussed and described in a number of works done by the great authors of Bajjika. Then we have language map of Nepal. So, why I have given here this map? Because this is the 2011 census of Nepal. This map was there and it shows that Bajjika is a language spoken there by 3% of population. This language is enlisted in the inventory of language of Nepal. It is treated there as a full-fledged language. But a very crucial question arises here. If a language has been considered as a full-fledged language in a country, then why could it not be accepted as a language in other country? Because in India it is considered as a dialect of Maithili language. Now we have some reasons of ignorance of Bajjika language. It is ignored by its own speech community. We can find some people who are not able to or who are not willing to use his own language as Bajjika. Then there is a lack of ethno-linguistic awareness among Bajjika speakers. Then of course flourishing other languages as a dominant language with high prestige in the same area where it has been spoken. In Bajjikanchal area there is Maithili speakers also, Hindi speakers also. So these two languages are dominant languages there. Then we have lack of details of a language to linguists. This is also a reason of ignorance of this language. Then there is negligence by policy makers. But now we have NEP 2020. So some scholars are working for Bajjika language syllabus for mother tongue education. It has been treated as underreported language, as I told earlier. Now, what is the current status of Bajjika in Bihar? So, there are so many authors have been working in the field of literature of Bajjika. Many committees are there, and Dr. Abhishek Kashyap and Dr. Mahbub Jahid, they are the linguists who worked in Bajjika language and for Bajjika language. They have worked in the field of linguistics. Dr. Kashyap has presented the study of Bajjika language on different linguistic levels. And Dr. Jahid has also worked on word morphology of Bajjika language. Then, why this language needs the maintenance? So, these are the reasons why it needs maintenance. So, what should we do for maintain this language? So it should be used in all spheres of life, that it could get equal status of high prestige language like Maithili or Hindi in that reason. Then there are some demographic factors which affect the language. Institutional support is also essential there. Then for maintenance purpose of Bajjika, linguistic and cultural factors can also play important role. So it should be enhanced. Bajjika should be standardized and should exist in written form. It has its own script, which is Kathy, and it has been developed by the scholars of Bajjika Anchal as well. So it should be used in education and all spheres of life. In terms of cultural factors, Bajjika should be used in cultural and religious ceremonies. Ethnic identity and self-identity are related to mother tongue. So when mother tongue is connected to education, it enhances ethnic awareness as well. So conclusion of this presentation, that it presents a brief sketch of Bajjikanchal region, and the facts related to Bajjikanchal region. So earlier, I think many people don't know that there is some region like this Bajjikanchal region, and it also mentioned the regions of ignorance. So we should pay attention towards it, so that a language could not be ignored. And the current status of this language is this, that many authors and linguists are working towards this, and some maintenance procedures are also going on. And NEP, according to NEP, we should have mother tongue education from primary classes. So there are beginners, there are scholars who have been working for this language. So this is my presentation.
Thank you, Abhilasha.
Uh, Abhilasha, actually I come from Mithilanchal region.
Yes, sir.
So thank you very much for your paper. It's a well-researched one. But still, first of all, when you use the term language, okay?
Yes, sir.
So I'm not talking in a layman's sense. If you look at term language in a linguistic or particularly socio-linguistic sense, then we will have to think whether can we call Bajjika a language or not. This is just a sort of some questions that came to my mind. Then other thing that I noticed, being one of Mathili speakers. So Mathili is one of the rarest language where you will see the caste dialect. Caste dialect means in the same village, the Brahmin, they speak the so-called pure Mathili, or you can say literary Mathili, and the non-Brahmin, they speak different language. Or the non-Brahmin variety of Mathili is similar to Bajjika. I come from Darbhanga district. So,
yes, sir.
You will see the thing you try to, then there is a possibility it may be some sort of diglossic or intermediary language between the Bhojpuri and, because what you say the Bajjika is made in the beginning of Muzaffarpur near Darbhanga border, and maybe somewhere Siwan and Muzaffarpur or Hajipur. Then you can see the Bajjika, you will see there a lot of differences is there in even in pronunciation, selection of word, etc. So and third thing I noticed that you can go for more the syntactic structure that will prove that how it is completely different from either Bhojpuri or Mathili, rather than saying what others said. So these are some of the observations and questions. Over to you. Thank you so much.
Okay, sir. Sir, I have a question to you, because you just told that there is a variation in language. I told this on language. Okay. So what is the difference between language and dialect? Or should we consider a dialect or language, or means these all are languages, we know. But just because some languages get political power or status,
Abhilasha, can I ask you to check the inbox, because there is another question for you, and I'll request you to talk to these two people after the session. So I don't have a question, but I have three quick comments. So the first one is, if you have looked at LSI by Grierson, I'll request you to check the other work by Grierson, which is specifically on Bihari languages. Have you looked at that?
Yes, part 2 is there.
No. Apart from LSI, there's a separate.
Sorry, ma'am, for interruption. I
Yeah.
don't think there is a term called Bihari language. We
I
could call it
even I don't
languages
think
from
that.
Bihar.
Even I don't think that
So
people.
please, I think
No, it is given by
this is not the
Grierson.
right platform to talk about.
No, sir, I
No, how
don't
can you
believe
say
that
that
there is some.
whatever Giriansan said is right? That
I
is
don't
our
believe
that is
that.
another problem, Naveen
I don't
mindset we
believe
have.
in the term. I don't believe in the term.
Okay.
But the name of the work is Bihari languages. That is,
There is
I'm
nothing
quoting
called
him.
Bihari language. There is
Yes,
nothing.
of
So
course,
what? There is
of
nothing
course,
called
of course,
languages of Bihar.
of course. So Grierson used the term Bihari language, and that is the title of the book. So I'm
Yes, yes.
mentioning the title of the book. I'm not mentioning the term as a separate term. And I thank you for pointing out there is a misconception about this term. So people who don't have any idea about Magahi and Angika and Bajjika, they will like use the cover term as Bihari language. And there is another very recent work, probably published from Springer in 2020, where all the languages of Bihar are discussed in detail. I'll also request you to go through the work.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and the question that Saroj Kumar asked is quite relevant. I think there is a need to give examples of syntactic and morphosyntactic structures rather than relying on phonology differences only. There's another question related to this in the chat box, and Bhim is also raising his hand. So I'll ask Bhim to put his question in the chat box as well, and request Abhilasha to give answers in the chat box. If needed, you can communicate through email. Please try to give examples of the syntactic structure so that we can understand that it's structurally different, and
Okay, ma'am.
also look at the terms like okkar. So okkar is used in other languages apart from Bajjika or Angika or Kurmali. So these are shared vocabulary, right? I mean, different languages. So apart from the syntactic structure, I'll request you to look at the language contact situation as well.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for this detailed presentation.